And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara, and I am so incredibly honored today to host the legend himself, Mr. Walter Mosley, here today to talk to us about his incredible career and body of work. Most recently, of course, Blood Grove. Mr. Mosley, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens.
Hello.
We are so incredibly happy to have you here. So I just want to kick off by welcoming everyone who is watching with us. We are live streaming to 6 different locations across Facebook and YouTube. So wherever you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. And you know how this works. Get your questions going in the comments. This is your time to talk to this incredibly accomplished mystery and fiction in all genres. Grammy award-winning, National Book Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award-winning, Mystery Writers of America Grandmaster Award-holding, NAACP Image Award, multiple winner, and PEN America's Lifetime Achievement Award. Also the Robert Kirsch Award for Lifetime Achievement from the LA Times Festival of Books. Sir, welcome so much. Let's dive right into it. So you were 34 years old when you first started writing, previously dipping a toe into the world of computers, even pursuing a PhD for a while. How you publish sometimes up to 2 books a year. How do you do it? How do you stay inspired? How do you keep producing?
Well, I love writing. So, I mean, that's all I can say about that. I love writing. And so I write every day. I get up in the morning and I write, hopefully 3 hours, never more, I don't think, but 3 hours every day. And that just opens up. And the more you write, the more you write. I think that's a big thing that, in the beginning I was writing, every day, and I wrote 1 book a year, and then it was 2 books a year. And then, now I'm doing a whole bunch of TV work. So some of that gets taken away, but I'm still, writing a book every year anyway.
Absolutely amazing. And I want to talk about the difference between short stories, long form, writing for TV, writing for the page. I can't wait to get into every single one of it. I see questions are already starting to come in. Marvin, welcome to the conversation. He'd like to know, are any more Bad Boy Brawley Brown coming back?
He means Brawley Brown. I don't think Bad Boy Brawley Brown is kind of come back. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it might happen, that it might happen, but I don't think so.
Do you just go where the spirit moves you? Do you plot out your next book? Do you just see where you feel inspired? How does it work for you?
Sometimes I outline a book. That doesn't really, outlining a book just knows that, generally I'm going, northeast. You still don't know what you're going to find along the way, who you're going to meet, what's going to happen, how are things going. I just finished today. I almost finished a book. I wrote 35 chapters, but there's a 36th chapter, and I'm not really sure about that. But I've been thinking about it. Tomorrow morning, I'll think about it some more. But, I had an outline, but where I got to is not exactly where the outline was going,
Is that because you just follow where the characters lead? What is the balance between outlining and following the creative spirit?
Well, the outline helps you know, okay, I'm writing this thing, and these are the events that happen. But the events that happen, it's like there's a sentence or two. But after the sentence or two is taking the place of a 2,000 word chapter, let's say. So when you start writing that chapter, different things happen, different moments happen. I got, I think, to chapter 34 of this book, and it's not easy. This is Joe Oliver. Joe Oliver wakes up in the church of this very evil guy, Melquarth Frost, who's a good friend of his, and he wakes up and he and the guy lives in a church, and there's in the nave there's 6 plate glass windows over here and 6 plate glass windows over there. What do you call them? Well, anyway, this the first 6 have images of saints, and it's just the wonderful saints and what they're doing, men and women. The other side are pictures of the same saints, but they were sinners earlier in their lives. So there's the images of them as sinners and what they did. Now that wasn't part of my outline, but I knew I had to put it there, partially to understand the character of Melkarth, who's not at the church at that time. But part of it was to understand the weight of good and evil between the characters.
Ooh. Oh, excellent. Well, thank you for that sneak peek into your scenes. Anissa Joy, welcome to the conversation. She's saying hello, Sara and Walter. Shay with the hobbies. Always good to have you here, girl. She said she is super excited to be here. So Shay was here when I hosted Tracy Clark and Faye Snowden last Monday. And Shay, you had some questions about craft for Tracy and for Faye. And I bet you're going to have some questions for Walter Mosley as well. She's saying she's in the middle of the Easy Rollins series and she is loving it. Question: do you prefer historical fiction writing to contemporary times?
Well, this is just a point of view. I think history happens when there's nobody alive around to remember it. So the Civil War is history because there's no more people alive from the Civil War. Nobody's experienced it. And so it's all, in books, in film, and photographs, in statues and things like that. That's history. But me writing about 1950, 1960, 1970, that's not history. That's memory, but it's not history. I have one book, a young adult novel called 47 about a slave boy. That happens in 1840. That's historical. And in an odd way, when I write science fiction and I'm writing about the future, in a way that's historical because it hasn't happened yet, and so it's nobody around has experienced that. But so I don't really have a care, but I want to make sure that you understand what I think is history. I don't think Easy Rollins is history. It happened, but most things happen. You could write about something about last year. Is that history? Well, no, it's not.
But the preservation of these stories, either in real time or when someone is still here to be able to remember 1969, is preserving this history, those stories as history for future readers, future generations, right?
It is, and it's also an issue of the other reason I'm writing about Black male heroes, because if you don't exist in the literature, you will never exist in the history. That's just it. It's so if people aren't writing stories about you and your life in literature and fiction, you're never going to be. You and all your people don't exist. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I saw in an interview that you did with the Mystery Writers of America Association that you said that, and I'm just looking for the exact quote here, but you said that there's hardly any Black heroes in the whole history of American literature, and even today, hardly any. That it was, quote, really important for you to create a character that Black men would read as a fictional character, not just for Black readers, but that was an important audience for you. Let's talk about that. So creating these lead Black characters at a time, especially when nobody else was doing that, you were really pioneering this field. And now we're starting to see more lead Black characters with Dr. Ian Smith, who I've hosted, or Aaron Phillips, amazing writers. We're seeing a lot more, both Black men and Black women on the page, long overdue and much appreciated. Can you talk about that as a pioneer? Are you feeling hopeful about the diversity on the page now? We still have a long way to go. What are you thinking?
Well, I had to break down the way how you're phrasing it, just to be clear. There's a lot of Black people in fiction. I mean, you go to the the Harlem Renaissance, for instance, and afterwards you have people like Richard Wright, James Baldwin, then go back, Langston Hughes, Chester Himes. The
Alice
thing is,
Walker.
yeah, well, yeah, but I was talking about black men, but
Oh,
yeah,
black men. Okay, yes.
But the thing is I'm what I'm talking about is heroes. Now, hero is something else. Richard Wright had incredible books, incredible history. There are no black heroes in it. There are black protagonists. There are characters who we see that they're deeply flawed, but you don't find it like you're writing a book and you're reading a book and you're loving it. You're reading Treasure Island. Jim Hawkins, you love Jim Hawkins. You want to be Jim Hawkins. Long John Silver, you love him even more. This is a guy. These are two men who are a boy and a man who represent a history that you want to be a part of. You're not just learning about it. You want to be a part of it. And so the part of that, and I'm not trying to say that nobody's writing about black male heroes today, because there are. I belong to this thing called Crime Writers of Color. So
Yes.
350 members, many men and women writing about black men and women heroes. But when I started writing, that was not the case. You didn't have these characters that you not only did you enjoy reading about, not only was the story exciting and the mystery, the crime, the whatever, but you wanted to be these people. You wanted to know these people. You'll say, I want to be Easy Rawlins. I want to be Mouse, depending on how crazy you are. But so that's what I'm talking about. So I'm not, so if somebody writes a lot about a protagonist and in a very, great literature, great story, whatever. But I'm actually talking about creating heroes that people can read, understand, identify with, and put them in a world that is as realistic as possible.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you for differentiating and clarifying that for me. I appreciate it. And for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you co-founded Crime Writers of Color with Kelly Garrett, who's coming on next week, and Gigi Pandian.
Yeah.
And you said you have over 350 authors of color whose voices you're amplifying, whose work you are supporting. Who are some of the authors of color that you're really excited about right now?
Well, really, there's Sean Cosby I think is extraordinary. Kelly also with her new novel, I think is wonderful. And then there are people older in my generation, Gary Phillips and Gar Anthony Haywood. They're a lot, and it's such a wonderful moment. I come from a time, and my time was pretty easy compared to somebody like Chester Himes or Donald Goines or that people who you couldn't get a mainstream publisher even to pay attention. There's a lot of work out there, tons of it. Valerie Wilson Wesley is a wonderful writer. There's so many, and there's so many interesting books. I don't think probably it's true. Crime Writers of Color should have a list putting that we put out in the world, telling them how many books are coming out and who's doing it, who's writing it. I think that's a good idea.
That would be amazing. Yeah, because I go to the website all the time, and also the Instagram account, just to see what's coming out and invite people to come and speak here. Shay is saying Mouse is her favorite character. Oh, Shay, that's so cool. Tell us why Mouse is your favorite character. Love to hear specifics about that.
Me too. Everything that you can write about that. But yeah, go on. Yes.
Yeah.
But
Debbie would like to know. Debbie, clarify what book you're asking about. Are you? So we're talking about Walter Mosley's most recent book, Blood Grove, the 15th in his Easy Rawlins series. We're talking about the Easy Rawlins series, but Walter has also written so many other things, including science fiction. His YA book 47, maybe that's the one you're asking about, as well as he's written 15 Easy Rawlins series, the Fearless Jones series, the Leonid McGill series, the Socrates Fortlow series, many standalones as well. So including erotica. So we're going to need to know more about that at some point, Walter. So Debbie, just let us clarify your question just so we can get it. She's saying that she loves the symbolism in the windows. You have your sinners and the church, and the why do you want to talk about good and evil right now, especially?
Oh, well, yeah, well, aren't we always talking about good and evil? I mean, this is
Mm,
not a new thing. Uh, I think one of the questions is once you start to take action in the world that
mm,
and like yourself say, I'm gonna this has happened and I have to do something about it,
mm,
whatever it is. Then all of a sudden you start to be, responsible. There are laws. The
mm,
laws don't necessarily reflect you and what
mm.
you're doing, or they don't necessarily protect who they should be protecting. Um, in my Joe Oliver series, this is the second book I've been working on, the one I was talking about with the windows. Um, the name of the book is going to be Every Man a King. Uh,
Every man a king. Okay.
he was set up by his own police department in the previous book, sent to prison. They were trying to kill him there, but he finally got out. A friend of his got him out, uh, and he realized that the only friend he had left was a guy that he once arrested, who's just a really bad guy. But the bad guy, because Joe was so kind to this guy, meaning to say he didn't kill him. Uh, the guy became his friend and actually changed his life to some degree. I mean, you can't get over all of the people you killed, all of the really evil things you've done. And but I think that was the thing. I picked out a bunch of saints because there are a lot of saints who were sinners,
Yes.
and 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 when you have it, is that the thing about Christianity is to say, not only can you overcome this, but you can become a paragon. And that's the moment that becomes really interesting, when you say, I'm trying to better myself and actually do it.
Ooh. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes, that is a fascinating thing, and the concept of forgiveness, and the concept of grace, and the concept of overcoming our past themes, certainly very present in Christianity. Debbie saying she's asking about the new book. Okay, so Every Man a King, forthcoming from Mr. Mosley. You're 35 chapters into what may be a 36 chapter book. He was just writing before he joined us, so when this book comes out, we can say we were there during the
Absolutely.
creation of it. Shay would like to know, what is a fiction book that you think is an excellent example of craft in the mystery and thriller realm, especially like you read it and it was just every mystery and thriller writer should read this.
Well, there's no question that it's the Maltese Falcon by Dasch. The Maltese Falcon is, I mean, Chandler wrote some wonderful books, and McDonald too. Ross McDonald wrote some wonderful books, but the Maltese Falcon is so good that when they gave it to Houston to write the screenplay, he just gave the book to his secretary and said, just write down all the dialogue and who speaks it, and that was the script. I mean, it's amazing, like how he's Hammett. He was just an extraordinary writer. And because when you're telling a story, the problem that most people have with novels, a lot of them who are writing mysteries, they just write you the mystery. Everything is about the mystery, and after a while you go, okay, fine, I'm trying to find that out. But you have to meander a little bit. You have to go around. You have to discover who the characters are. You have to see what kind of personalities they have. You have to see what the city is like, what the police are like, what different jobs are like, that you walk into a guy and he's working in a factory or making candles or whatever, selling whatever, and but you have to not go too far off into these other parts of the world. Hammond was a genius at that, and the Maltese Falcon is like, I don't know, it's the best.
So I will confess, I've never read that book. I've seen the movie with Humphrey Bogart. Of course, I'm a huge old movie fan.
Yeah.
So I am now going to immediately add that to my list. And Shay, I bet you are too. So maybe we can have a book club on that. Oh my goodness! New York Times bestselling author Heather Gudenkauf in the audience. Heather, welcome to the conversation. So Heather, when I shared that I would be having the incredible honor to host you, commented that you are her literary hero. Heather is the New York Times bestselling author of 8 books, most recently The Overnight Guest, which is on the NYT bestseller list right now. She would like to know, Mr. Mosley, what is your best advice for writers who are ready to dive into the daunting revision process? And I am leaning in for this as well.
Well, we all know, or we all should know, that writing is rewriting. And the idea is, when you get the book down, right, you just write it down. I mean, this happened and that happened, and this happened and that happened. A lot of it doesn't make sense. A lot doesn't, hold together. And then, you come back for the rewrite. I think a lot of times, listen, I mean, this is just writers talking to each other. I'm not trying to educate anybody, but the thing is that what I often do is I'll go through the book, I'll write the first draft, I'll keep going through. And then at some point I realize that my experience of the novel is received. I already know what I thought I was writing. Whether or not I wrote that, I know what I thought I was writing. And when I read through it again, it's just the same thing. So what I do is I try to shock myself out of it. And what I do is I read it into a recorder, the whole novel. I just read the whole novel into the recorder. It teaches you so much about dialogue, because you might write down what somebody says, but when you read it out loud, you say, no, nobody talks like that. Now, there might be 1 or 2 words that are off. There might be the whole thing is off. Also, plot wise, also just where you put words, you kind of mix them up and turn them around. Everything is mixed up. I think that when you read it out loud, you actually, while you're reading it out loud, you re-experience it. And then when you listen back to it, you re-experience it again. And that's one of the tricks that I use that helps me so much.
You write it, you write the draft, then you go in, you try to shock yourself, which I love. I'm picturing you sitting there being like, I just shocked myself. Whoa, I didn't see that coming. Then you read it into recorder, then you listen to yourself reading it, and you rewrite as you go. And you're saying, is it mostly the dialogue because that you're noticing, oh, that's too stilted, or is it the plot points too?
Yes, plot point too. I mean, when you say, when you hear, you might hear something says, oh yeah, I just saw him in the store. And you're going, well, no, you didn't just see him. It was like 3 days ago that it was in, the store, or, whatever the structure is. Also, I just want to say, whenever anybody talks about plot, I want to be really clear. I see plot as the structure of revelation. When you reveal what to your audience, that's what a plot is. There's all kinds of ways to talk about it, but it's not made out of blocks. It's actually, well, we need to know when this character is aware of a really important moment. And when we're going to make the audience aware. There's 2 different forms of revelation: reveal to characters, also reveal to the reader.
Ooh, Heather, thank you so much for the great question. And if I could, I'd like to pony onto that. When you are going back and looking at this as the craft of revelation, when to reveal various bits of information, when to withhold, one thing that I really struggle with as a writer is when and how to do that, because the lack of certainty, because writing is not math, because there is no one right answer. There's so many different ways to tell a story. How do you decide what is the best way to tell the story? How do you make that choice and not get overwhelmed by the infinite number of choices?
Well, you don't need to get overwhelmed, because, I'll answer that by somebody asked. It happens often enough. I'll be at do a reading or a talk or something, and somebody will say, how do I know when the novel is finished? And I think that your question is kind of nestled in there somewhere. And usually the kind of personality that asks that question is that mathematical kind. What is the moment, when A equals B, and it's done. And this is how I explain it. I say, I write a draft, and I read it, and I see what's wrong, and I rewrite the draft, and I read it, and I see what's wrong, and I rewrite the draft. And I just do it again and again and again. Every time I see something that's wrong, and I fix that thing. I see something that's wrong, and I fix that thing or those things. And maybe I'm in the 15th draft, maybe I'm the 20th draft, and I read it, and I see what's wrong, and I don't know how to fix it. So the novel is finished.
Wow. So you send it out into the world thinking this is not perfect, but I don't know how to fix it anymore.
There are very few books. I think one or two books. What's that, Madame Bovary, right? They say that's a perfect novel. I like it very much. I don't know about perfect, but there is no such thing as a perfect novel. It's not that kind of thing. If you build a scale, the scale has to be perfectly weighted. Otherwise, you're not going to have the same weight every time. But a novel is not the same thing. You don't have a perfect child. You don't have a perfect parent. You don't have a perfect, lover. The thing is that when you accept somebody's flaws, then that's a friend. When you don't accept them, that's not a friend.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, that's such a beautiful way to view your writing.
It's also a way to be kind to yourself when you're working,
Yes.
because the idea because if you expect the novel to be perfect, you also expect yourself to be perfect. This is not going to happen anytime soon. I don't think Jesus wrote novels.
I love that. Walter Mosley dropping gems, taking us to church. I feel like I'm having a spiritual experience. I love this. So you seem very interested in Jesus, in the church. Your mom was Jewish. How is that for you? The balance of...
I'm not at all interested in the church.
Okay.
I am interested in the dialogue that comes out of religious thinking. And when you start talking about perfection, there's who's perfect. There's some angels that are perfect, but yeah, my mother's Jewish. My mother and Jewish, and I say that in a racial way because she was also a communist. So it's like she's Jewish, but she's not believing in God. But she's Jewish because to be Jewish is it is a race. I mean, there's things just like the Picts and the Goths and the Ostrogoths and the Druids and there's all these races of people. The idea of saying that there's a black race, a white race, it's just it's kind of lost on me. I'm saying, well, you two don't look alike, and so why do you say you're the same thing? You're from the same country? No. Do you speak the same language? No. Do you have the anyway, but my mother's Jewish, my father's black. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you for all of this. Anissa would like to know, who has been your favorite character to write and why? Great question, Anissa.
I kind of, when you talk about a musician, and you talk about their whole, their oeuvre, right? All the work, and that's the way I think about writing. I don't have a favorite book. I don't have a favorite character. It's whenever I'm talking, like whenever I'm writing, if I'm writing about Mouse, well, that's fun. I'm having a good time writing about Mouse. But when I'm writing some science fiction, I wrote a science fiction book about an alien that came to Earth, like some millions of years ago, and he could copy other people, so he became a monkey, and slowly over time he ended up being a human being, and I really like writing about that character. That was really a lot of fun. He's really old and really interesting, and he kind of created the human race, but it certainly wasn't God. It's fun, I mean, writing is fun. It's not character. My love for it is not driven by character, but my love of writing, to be able to explain what a place looks like, what a person is thinking, how they're feeling, how they react emotionally. Those are the moments, and you can do that with any character. I can't hear you.
That was
There.
weird. Do you feel that your writing is getting better?
Yeah, I do think it's getting better, but it's an interesting thing.
Mm.
My first published book is Devil in a Blue Dress. The first book I wrote is Gone Fishing. Those two books, very old, very early in my, my experience as a writer. I'm a much better writer than that now, but I wouldn't say that Blood Grove is better than Devil in a Blue Dress.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? There are reasons that people read. And again, it's not that thing you were talking about earlier. It's not mathematics.
Mm.
That, well, look, he used more interesting words in this book, or he writes longer, more complex sentences, or he seems to be thinking more deeply about blah, blah, blah. But, Devil in a Blue Dress has a certain kind of life to it. It's like saying, well, who's smarter, this 5-year-old or this 25-year-old? It depends on what you're trying to point out. The 5-year-old might be much, much more attuned to certain things.
Fernanda's saying you are such a wonderful writer. Fernandez, we completely agree. Thank you for your comment. And Fernandez is saying also that you remind him of Faulkner.
Wow.
High praise there.
Sure is. High praise and complex.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Kathy's saying you have to meander around and discover the character. She's quoting what you just said. She said she absolutely loves that process. So let's talk about when you wake up every day, you write every day for 3 hours, you're meandering around discovering the characters. Do you ever find that they lead you down a dead end and then you got to back it up? Like what do you do? Do you still hit snags at your level, or are you just a well-oiled machine because you are where you are in your career? You've worked so hard to get there.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of where, like, what a dead end would be. Sometimes I remember once I was working on a book about Robert Johnson. It was a novel about Robert Johnson called R.L.'s Dream. And I had written the book and I gave it to my editor, and the editor, and it's not like I always listen to editors. I want you to understand that, but it's like the editors, he pointed out, he said, if this is true, then how could this be true? And when I thought about it deeply, I had to go back and get rid of like at least a third of the book and rewrite it, because he was right. The two things couldn't be true. And because of that, I had to cut out a whole bunch of what was happening, and so, that's always possible. It doesn't often happen, but it can happen at any time. It's like I love boxing, and in my opinion, the greatest boxer ever was Archie Moore, and Archie Moore was he was the light heavyweight champion for years, and he fought this one guy named Yvon Durrell in Canada. And Yvon Durrell, he just hit him and knocked him. He knocked him down, but really, Archie Moore was knocked out. It's just that his legs didn't know it, so he stood up, and the guy, came at him, saying, "Guy, he's weak. I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to be the champion." But Archie Moore survived. He got knocked down 3 more times, but he survived, and he made it to the end, and he won the fight. Actually, he knocked the other guy out. And when he was asked about it all these years later, they said, "How did you survive?" And he said, "Well, I used my left hand, which was very educated at the time." It's not that he was educated. His left hand knew what to do. You know what I mean? And so I think that when you're writing every day, all your life, you have certain talents that you wouldn't have if you didn't write every day. And so at any time somebody could knock me down. At any time I could feel like I'm not going to make it. But, there's a part of me that's educated to be that writer. So I'm hoping that I can run into a snag just like anybody else. Just like Archie Moore says, well, I can get knocked down like anybody else. So the question is do I get back up? And is there enough education there to survive? And so that's what I think. I mean, I think that's how I would answer your question. Maybe it happens less to me now, but still.
Well, as a National Book Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award winner, the National Book Foundation raving that Mosley is, quote, a master of craft and narrative. And through his incredibly vibrant and diverse body of work, our literary heritage has truly been enriched. From mysteries to literary fiction to nonfiction, Mosley's talent and memorable characters have captivated readers everywhere. I mean, they just said it all, and we're so grateful for the myriad ways that you have enriched our literary landscape. So this is just absolutely amazing. Heather Goodenkoff saying she has never done this before. She's going to try reading her books into a recorder. Thank you. Shay with the hobby saying she's never tried that either. She's going to give it a go. Cannon chiming in, welcome to the conversation, saying she likes sci-fi and fantasy. What novel of yours would you recommend starting with? Fascinating question. Looking at the entirety of your work, where would someone new start?
Well, I mean, sci-fi and fantasy. I think my first, like kind of alternate fiction book, which is really it's kind of science fiction. I mean, but in their way, in science fiction, you should really kind of have science that that you can kind of prove or have a leap off point. And I'm not sure this book has that, but I do think it would talk to you. It's called Blue Light. My first book of let's call it science fiction. It's about I realize that I'm drawn to science fiction because a lot of times, science fiction is human centric. We're conquering space. We're going into outer space. We're meeting this. We're having a war with an alien, concept or race. And I used to do it. Like I wrote a book. What's it called? What's it called? Oh my God, the name slipped out of my head. Well, I'll have to remember the name, but it's a book in which there are two ultimate beings. One is a viral based life form which got knocked way deep into the earth by a comet. It's called the Wave, and the virus has been rising ever since. And what it does is any life form that it comes across, it can copy that life form. And its knowledge and its genetics and all this other stuff. At the same time, it's sending thoughts to a gigantic gaseous being that's larger than our solar system, and they're falling in love. The problem is humanity, and the humans are getting in the way. They're afraid of the wave that's rising up out of the ground, and they want to destroy it. But it's far superior and much nicer than humans are, and those are the kind of stories I like to tell. Blue Light is the same, though a little bit more complex to put into easy forms. But I'm interested in those beings that are beyond us, that we don't have to be afraid of, because they don't really care. They like we're like kittens or dogs or whatever, and they don't want to eat us. They just say, well, just leave us alone. We'll do what we do. Yeah.
Actually, a friend of mine who has a PhD in astrophysics spent 10 years at Princeton looking for extraterrestrials, looking for life on other planets. He hasn't found anything yet, but I feel like they could be out there. And I look forward to seeing if he finds anything.
Yeah, well, it's so hard to even define. Like, for me, these life forms, blue light, the life form is light, but well, anyway, we're descendants of the light, but the light, when it comes again, re-educates us, and it's really fun to play with, because you can say, well, life like us on another planet, but who's to say? I mean, it could be that these gases moving through space have developed an intelligence, that viruses in the ground have developed an intelligence. We don't know. I mean, we have these ideas, and we know so little. It's amazing.
Exactly. Maybe something we can't even see or interact with in a way that our human brains can comprehend.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Shay is saying she is loving this conversation. Shay, me too. Kathy has a craft question. How many drafts do you usually run through? So you were referencing, that if you see it, you can fix it. If you see something wrong, you fix it. When you have run out of things, and you referenced 15 or 20 drafts, I think we're all wondering, how many are there?
Well, 15 or 20, I mean, yeah, I mean, 15 or 20 is kind of a normal number. Sometimes, I have written one or two books just in one sitting, but, when I say one sitting, over a, 2, 3 month period, I just writing, finished. But as a rule, I'm going over it again and again and again and wondering and kind of crafting the language, because, this new book I'm writing is 70,000 words. And really, I know every sentence in the book, right? And I know every one that's a clunker. I'm going, no, that sentence is not right. This is, and you really want to, it's never going to be perfect, but you want it to get the best that you can do, that's the thing. So, 20 drafts is not a lot, but it's up to you. I mean, you're going to figure out when you're finished, and when you're finished is when you can't go any further.
I love that. This is absolutely fascinating. Ryan, welcome to the conversation. He'd like to know, do you ever find yourself stuck on character descriptions? Great question.
Well, sometimes I find myself lacking in character description. Sometimes I say, I don't, what's going on with this guy? What's going on with this woman? What are they thinking? How are they feeling? And if I've just, I used to explain to, when the few times I've taught, I would explain to people, I'd say, well, you have two characters and they're kind of interesting. And they're having the, that kind of Aristotelian thing, and, the dialectic. And this one is trying to get that, and that one's trying to get this. But while they're talking, they're in a restaurant, and a waiter comes up and says, can I get you some more water, sir? Now, how do they talk? What's their accent? What does their clothes look like? Is there a stain on it? Are they absolutely, perfect? Do they have an attitude? There's all that stuff, and that's the simplest thing. That's just the character that, kind of just walks across the stage. But I sometimes find myself lacking. I come back and I say, I don't really get this character. I don't know where they're coming from, what they're doing, why they're doing it. And once I've asked myself that question, my rewrites, I start adding stuff. I say, well, maybe this happened. Maybe they get a phone call. Maybe they have a daughter somewhere. Maybe they're running from the police. I don't know, but try to figure it out. So it's I don't get stuck actually. It's not that I get stuck. It's that I realized I haven't done enough.
Ooh. Oh, I love that. I love that perspective, because I think so many of us, I know I resonate with that, Ryan. I feel stuck all the time. So I love this shift in perspective of it's so empowering and illuminating. I feel like I'm taking a masterclass right now. Susan, welcome to the conversation. Great question. She would like to know, what writers, living or dead, would you like to meet and why?
I never really want to meet writers. This is really interesting things. I mean, there's some writers who I just think, I don't know. The Russians are the best fiction writers. So you go to the 19th century and the Russians, or beginning of the 20th century and the Russians, they're the best. And the best of all of them is Nikolai Gogol, right? Gogol. Those short stories, The Inspector General, the Overcoat, The Nose, these short stories are amazing. And his novel, the one novel, Dead Souls, oh my God, it's incredibly funny. It's incredibly sensual. It's modern. It's as modern as Moby Dick, and Moby Dick is a modernist novel, written way back then. I don't ever in my life want to meet Gogol. Never. I don't want to meet Herman Melville. I don't want to meet, because the writing is something separate. It's a creation that you put out into the world,
Mm.
you know. Um, and it's true. I don't want to meet, and I mean, I meet writers, but I don't go out of my way to meet them. I don't spend my life with writers. Most of my friends are not writers. Uh,
What
uh,
if we take the writer out of the question? What if we say, what person, living or dead, writing or not, what one person would you want to meet?
hmm. You know, it's so interesting.
Mm.
Even that is hard for me.
Mm.
Even that is hard for me because it's abstract.
Mm-hmm.
And I've met many people who I really like. I just love. I just did this the show I did for Apple TV Plus based on my novel The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray. Uh, there was an actor in it. Yeah, I mean, I already knew Sam Jackson and these other people, but there's an actor in it who I've seen in many things, and I just loved his acting. And then we met, and I really loved him. It's Walton Goggins. Walton
Okay.
Goggins, he's the joint. I mean, he was great. He's he embodies the South. That's where where he comes from and how he lives. And he's humble, but so incredibly smart. But I wouldn't have
Mm.
known that before I met him. I just
Mm.
loved watching him, in movies and on television. Like I love reading people's books, like Gogol. It might be that I met Gogol and loved him, but I don't think so. But maybe, you know, um,
He
you
could be
know,
your new best friend, Walter. You could have matching bracelets. We don't know. I mean,
life is an experience. You're going through it. It's just like the novel. You're going through it, and you meet people, and some of them
mm.
you really love, and you say, "Wow, we're friends. We're going to be friends." And some of them you don't. And what are the reasons? I don't. I can love somebody's book, and that's good enough for me.
I love that. JC Carpenter, welcome to the conversation. She said, I just wanted to let Mr. Mosley know that I loved his masterclass and I got so much out of it. Thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you.
JC, thank you for sharing. Thank you for posting. Thank you for joining us here today. We are loving this conversation. Raymond, welcome to the conversation. How many plots or stories do you have on the shelves or in the wings? Cool question.
Well, I know I always go like in a funny way to answer questions. I write every day, like I said. The reason I write every day is because I have a strong belief in the unconscious, that there are all these things in your mind that you don't know, that the only way you can get at it is using a kind of an outmoded version of therapy, psychoanalysis. The thing about psychoanalysis is this: you lie down on the couch every day for an hour. The therapist sits there and basically says very little. You just make connections, and then the next day you make more connections. Every once in a while, the therapist says, "Wow, you're talking about your mother again," or whatever. If I write every day, the next day when I get up, I find that I've gone further in the story, even though I didn't expect to. And so all of the stuff in my unconscious, is coming out. It's coming out, and it's a very deep place, that experience. And so, yes, I have plots and stories on the shelf, but the shelf is in the darkness. And I just reach into the darkness every once in a while, every morning, and I pull out something. I have no idea what I'm going to get, but
Ooh. So you don't have drafts that you've started and put away. You don't have, things projects you've abandoned. When you say it on the shelf, you mean your mental shelf, your subconscious shelf.
Well, because writing, all art is living. It's living things. It's not about it is about craft, and it's not, and so it's part of you, these stories. And you don't have to worry about it. I mean, because a lot of people say, "Well, I don't know if I have another story to write." Well, if you have an unconscious, you have an infinite amount of stories to write. They're in there, they're waiting. You're working every day, so they're, popping up saying, "Get me, grab me," and you do.
I love this. Shay saying she also took your master class and she feels the best part of it was the spicy, advice, the fiery advice. Shay, give us some more details on that.
I wonder what that was. Did I have spicy advice?
Shay, let us know.
Yeah, well, she'll tell us. Yeah.
I think she will. So many people, so many writers that I have hosted over the past 2 years since this initiative, since I started this initiative, messaged and commented that you mean so much to them, that your writing means so much to them, that they have read all of your books, that they look up to you as this master of craft, as a leader in the field, that you're not just your accomplishments. I mean, TV writing, short story writing with The Awkward Black Man, long story. Dr. Marcia Croyle, I take questions in advance. Dr. Marcia Croyle submitted one, and she has a few actually. She'd like to know thoughts on writing short stories versus full-length novels. What is easier for you, and what do you prefer?
Well, the great writer E.M. Forster wrote a book called Aspects of the Novel, which is really, so it's not about writing or anything like that, but it's about novels. It's about aspects of the novel. And what he says about the novel is that it's 50,000 words more or less of spongy prose.
Okay.
And that's it. Like if your character comes in and she's wearing, a pink dress, well, it's just a pink dress. It's that it doesn't have to mean something. You don't have to resolve that decision by the end of the novel or the chapter or whatever. She's wearing a pink dress because it's a big story and more is happening than you can possibly absorb. Now, a short story, on the other hand, is crystalline. If she wears a red dress, there's a reason for a red dress. If somebody, the first thing is my name is Martin and I hate that name. And well, that's going to be a very important thing because a short story doesn't have that much time to work. Everything has to be connected. It's crystalline. It's not spongy. It's crystalline. If you write a poem, it's diamond, right? It's
Ooh.
that tight, that crystal. And I don't know what's more fun. I like writing short stories a lot. My short stories are kind of wild. A lot of people, I think the literary community has never, absorbed my short story writing as something as important. And I can see why, because I'm way out there. I have so much fun doing it. I'm going to tell this story, but the short stories are very challenging. And but I don't like them any more or less than writing novels. Writing novels might be a little bit easier, but
they're easier because you have more acreage to explain yourself. Okay.
More sponginess. You can get really serious and tight, or you can say, you can just talk about, a drive in the country.
Speaking of craft and different different mediums of writing, Shay would like to know what's you've also written for television, you've written and produced. She'd like to know what's something writing for television has helped or taught you as a novelist.
I don't really know. That's a good question. Listen, I write for television, and I've been doing it for the last 5 years, ever since John Singleton kind of wrangled me into the show Snowfall. I'm not really sure. Listen, writing for television, writing for film in general, it's a collaborative act. It's what you learn is how to work with other people, how to work with all kinds of different things. You're writing language, and one day people are talking it on a screen somewhere. It's no longer your script. Sometimes they use the language you use. A lot of times they don't. Sometimes they use the scenes you described. A lot of times it doesn't fit in the budget. So what I learned, and I have learned a lot from writing television, but I'm not sure um, that it goes off into film. It goes off into fiction. Um, because it's a very, very different labor.
Do you read that into a recorder and listen back to it? Your TV writing?
Sometimes
Mm.
I do,
Because it's so
especially when I'm doing
dialogue
my own
heavy,
work.
isn't it?
Say what?
It's so dialogue heavy.
Yeah, but it's interesting. It is dialogue heavy, but dialogue is the least important thing in writing film.
Ooh, why is that?
Well, because number one, the actors have to, once the actors get the dialogue, they do things with it that you can't possibly do writing it down.
Ooh.
That's one thing. But the other thing is this: film is about what you see. That's what you say. When you talk about movies, you say, "Oh yeah, I saw that movie." You never say I heard it. You never say I read it. You never say, I saw it. And that is it. It's images. And once you start to realize that you're working with the amount of images you have on a screen, it's amazing what goes on that screen. You have a television on something over here, you have a poster over there, you might have the peelings from an orange over here. You're getting all this information, and most of it is imagistic.
That is fascinating. I just assumed it was so, I just hosted Lucy Foley earlier today, and she was saying that the way that dialogue is her favorite thing to write. And the reason that the way that she perfects it or tries to up her craft is by reading screenwriting. So I'm so fascinated to hear.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And I would say, because there is a place where dialogue is everything. And it seems a lot like screenplays, but it's not. It's play. If you write a play, dialogue is everything. Absolutely everything. I mean, there's images, you're seeing it, but really it's limited, right? There's a stage, and there are things. There's a chair, and there's a wall with some paintings on it. But really, these people are talking, and when you write a play, the rules are this: you cannot change one word in the dialogue, not one word, unless the writer says yes.
The actor cannot.
Yeah. The actor or the director, no one. Only the writer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And there's a reason for that, because language is everything in plays. But in screenplays, the closest thing is to poetry, and poetry is image. Poetry is so imagistic. What you see, how you feel it, and anyway.
I have to confess, I never was able to really resonate with poetry until Amanda Gorman blew my mind at the inauguration last year. And I am obsessed with her. I love her so much. And I feel like I always thought, I didn't get poetry because I need the spongy prose. I need the extra meat. But Amanda Gorman, I actually cry every time I listen to one of her poems or I read one of her poems, because she has such an incredible ability to hone in on everything that we're all feeling or that I'm feeling, and say it so efficiently and so perfectly and so poetic, so beautifully. And I'm so excited to finally being able to understand and excited by poetry for the first time in my life.
There's a big door in poetry. I mean, there are people who can, Amir Baraka, his poetry is extraordinary. I mean, his understanding. Anyway, I mean, there are a lot of wonderful poets, and poetry is everything. If you don't understand poetry teaches you what rhythm is. It teaches you what music is. It teaches you what rhyme is. It teaches you what metaphor is, which is incredible. I mean, you have to know. There, like 80% of writing you learn in poetry. When I studied writing, I studied with a guy, Bill Matthews, who's a wonderful American poet. He died, but he was a wonderful American poet. I studied with him for 3 years. And I'm not a very good poet at all, but studying poetry and learning how to critique it, I learned everything about the tools you need. It's not the finished product, but it's the hammers and the screws and the wrenches, like, what's the difference between a metaphor and a simile, for instance?
I don't
You
know.
know, yeah, well, yeah, but in poetry, you have to know. You have to know. And yeah, I remember when I was talking to Bill about it, Bill said, "Well, when it's a simile, you say this is like that.
Mm.
He was like a bear, big. You can go on in language, but if you said he is a bear, then he is a bear."
Ooh.
You know what I mean? There's the immediacy of the metaphor, and listen, there are 116 things, I'll say, making up a number, that if you study poetry, it will make your fiction better.
Okay, mission accepted, challenge accepted. I will commit myself to studying poetry more. Shay saying the way that she's feeling validated as a poet, as a short story writer, while watching this conversation, she says, "Thank you. Thank you for being here, Shay. Always a pleasure to have you." Raymond would like to know, have you written or considered writing a play? So you have written plays.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I wrote a play. I wrote a group of short stories that was influenced by Langston Hughes's simple stories about a guy named Tempest Landry. It's called the Tempest Tales. Tempest, he lives in Harlem. He's kind of a hustler. He's a lovable guy. Has a wife, a whole bunch of girlfriends, children everywhere. He's not a bad guy, but if he sees $1 laying on the table, he might pick it up. Surreptitiously. He might. There's a lot of things he might do. But anyway, he gets in trouble, but not on his fault. Somebody robbed the place with a gun and ran away, and he looked a little bit like Tempest, and the police shoot him down. They see him, and he reaches for this thing that he has, and they shoot him down. They kill him, and he goes up. He goes up to waiting to get into heaven, and the guardian comes and says, "You've committed a lot of sins." And he mentions a few sins to him, and Tempest, the first person ever to do this, says, "Well, yeah, I did that, but there was a good reason for it. There was a reason, a mortal reason that I did it." And the guy says a few things. It's St. Peter, and he says a few things, and finally Tempest says, I didn't do anything wrong." And he gets so mad. Peter gets so mad. He says, "You're going to hell." And Tempest says, "No." And it turns out, because of free will, he doesn't have to go. But he's the first person ever to say no. And so he gets sent back to Earth with an angel, and the angel's job is to convince him to admit to his sins. But he's not doing it. And so, and the problem is if he doesn't do this, the whole structure of heaven and hell falls apart. So that's what's in the balance. And so I wrote a play called The Fall of Heaven, based on the first book of Tempest Tales. It's lots of fun.
And Raymond, I'm going to put that in the comments for you a little more about that, just for you or for anyone else who's interested in diving a little more deeply. I pulled some tasty tidbits from Walter Mosley's website. Y'all, it looks like we are out of time. This hour has flown by. Walter Mosley, what an incredible honor. I've been wanting to host you for years. I am so honored to even sit in your presence and to be the recipient of all of this amazing wisdom. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's been wonderful. Yeah.
The world has, as the National Book Foundation said, been enriched incalculably by your body of work. Heather Goodenkopf saying, thank you so much for being here. She's learned so much. Kathy, also a great writer, saying this was great. Thank you so much. Y'all, thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Mosley, for being here. And and for sharing all of this wonderful, wonderful wisdom. Jo Verne, thank you for being here. And I will be back at 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock with John Searles and Rhea Fry. Alan, not only saying thank you, such a great interview with so much wisdom and perspective. Shay, thanks so much for hosting. This was amazing. Shay, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you in a few hours or 1 hour.
Bye. Thank you so much.